Hello.
Hello, friends.
Welcome to the last Tuesday in April, which feels like some sort of crime.
I have no idea what day it is anymore, especially because we do so much of our filming in advance.
Yeah, I know. I just saw somebody just put up I just saw our Brazil coverage went up and it had no views, and I was like, how dare it? Oh, it's been up for an hour.
It went up today. Got it.
Oh, it went up today. Oh, we filmed that a month ago.
Yeah, I know. So that's part of the reason why I have no idea what day or time it is. Because we film so much stuff and we film it a lot in advance. So yeah, I did the same thing. I was on YouTube today and I was like, what? Oh, okay. That's where we are.
That's where we are. We also want to say before we get into anything else, we are so sorry if anyone is here to listen to the discussion with Dr. Nadine Thornhill about turning red. Dr. Nadine is temporarily unwell, and we hope that she can join us next week. That's the plan. But if you're here for Turning Red and you need to tap out, we understand. No hard feelings. What we're going to do today instead is talk about some empathy exercises and talk a little bit about a training we have coming up, explaining where we're coming from on that and why we're offering it, and just having some chats around that. But as always, we'd love to know where you're listening in from in the chat box. Don't hesitate. And if you're part of the replay crew, hello, replay crew.
Hi.
We're so delighted to have you. So I think that's all the housekeeping out of the way. Anything else, Erin?
That's all we've got so far. Apologies that we're not talking about Turning Red.
We're not Nadine.
Yeah. Also, if you came to see Nadine, apologies. It's just 2 doctors today.
Well, not 3.
Not 3.
All right. Well, I guess let's get cracking and let's start with these empathy exercises. You are first up, dear.
I am. This one is a couple of weeks old now at this stage, middle of April, but still one I wanted to make sure and talk about. And it is that Hallmark is continuing in its vein of actually practicing inclusivity by having different kinds of humans in their romance movies. We're continuously bowled over and overjoyed to see this transformation, and they announced that they will be debuting a romance with a lead character who has Down syndrome.
Wild.
So I know, never have I ever. Actress Lily D. Moore is set to star in Color My World with Love as Kendall, a quote-unquote talented artist with Down syndrome who creates beautiful paintings in the Impressionist style that reflect the reality of her subjects as she sees them. Things take a romantic turn when she meets Brad in a cooking class. You had me at painting and cooking.
Yeah, exactly. I didn't need to know anything else besides that.
2 of our favorite tropes. So yeah, delighted to see it. Congratulations for Lily. I know she's done a lot of work in representing folks with Down syndrome on television and film. And so we're delighted to see this movie. Maybe we'll cover it. I don't know.
We'll see.
We'll see.
Something we do cover all the time is employee and employer relations. So this is my empathy exercise because it made me you couldn't have designed a better empathy exercise for us, which is that a jury awarded a man nearly $500,000 after he sued his company, a Kentucky jury, after he sued his company for making him go to a birthday party, his own birthday party, after he really clearly said he didn't want one. His boss made fun of him. He said he didn't want one. It would exacerbate his anxiety. It wasn't a way to celebrate him, all that kind of things. His boss, I think, called him a sissy in one of the reports that I wrote, and was really, really rude about it. And so a Kentucky jury is making this company pay that man $500,000, which is a really good lesson for all of us to remember that how you want to be celebrated is not how everybody wants to be celebrated. Oh. And now we got a price tag on not listening to your employees.
I mean, it's so good.
Yeah. There's his supervisor chastised him for stealing his coworker's joy and being a little girl.
Wow. I mean, you and I have had a lot of conversations in the last week about toxic leadership, but if that is not a cookie cutter version.
Yeah, we're going to be using this one for a really long time. Long time. Yeah. So, and speaking of things that, let me do this transition. Speaking of things that have been true for a long time, Puerto Ricans have been citizens for a really long time, despite the recent Supreme Court statements.
Yeah, good transition. I was going to do something similar. Speaking of things that haven't changed, racism from the United States towards its citizens. So in a case heard last week by the Supreme Court, they upheld the differential treatment of residents of Puerto Rico, ruling that Congress was within its power to exclude Puerto Ricans from a benefits program that's available in all 50 states and the District of Columbia. Lest you think this is like benefits that they don't pay in for, it is SSI benefits, so benefiting a lot of older, disabled, and blind Americans for
it's Social Security. Like we all pay it.
Yeah, we all pay Social Security benefits. And a lot of arguments are that the Puerto Ricans don't pay the same level of taxes as we do. We don't care. They're either U.S. citizens or they're not U.S. citizens, and they're like they can't even send their representative to advocate for them because they're not given a representative and they're only allowed to vote in presidential elections. So this is an empathy exercise because it's a reminder to all of you folks who might be watching or listening that Puerto Rico is in fact a United States territory and that Puerto Ricans are United States citizens, and we should do everything we can to listen to and advocate for these United States citizens who do not have a voice.
Yeah, because the thing is, like, even if you're, like, where the firestorm of this started was a Puerto Rican citizen, a Puerto Rican man who was living in New York when this all happened.
Yeah.
And he had a stroke, and people went to file disability benefits for him, like good hospital administrators, and they got denied. And it was like, wait, what?
Well, and also, like, I don't know if this was the same guy or a different case, but one of the stories that I read this week, reading about it, was a guy who got disability support in the United States, moved back to Puerto Rico, continued to get disability support, and then was sued and had to pay back $300,000 in disability support that he was given.
Explain to me how he would possibly do that while he's on disability.
Where is that? Okay. Where is that money coming from? Yeah.
When I think of the United States Supreme Court, I get tired.
Yeah. So this was an empathy exercise. It's just like, hey, let's listen to Puerto Ricans and, try and get them some form of blessed equity.
Speaking of equity, though, there is some happening in broadcasting at the moment. This upcoming Kentucky Derby will be the 148th run for the Roses that is televised, and for the very first time a woman will produce the telecast. This is incredibly exciting news in a sport that is even more gendered than some others and even less gender equity than some other sports that we enjoy. So to have equity in the broadcasting booth is awesome. Lindsey Schanzer, we salute you. We hope you have a great producing experience. And all of you who care about horse racing, we hope whatever horsey you want to win wins. This isn't a sport that we follow, but we're excited for Lindsey.
Congratulations, Lindsey. I have no idea what it means.
But what we do know what it means is this picture of the Sharma sisters from Bridgerton.
There she is. She's got the transitions coming out those sleeves, folks. Throwing them out at us. Yeah, so I included this one at the last minute because we knew Nadine wasn't able to join us. And I thought it would be a good time to have a little bit of a conversation. We have this conversation in our Bridgerton coverage, obviously, which you can find that on our YouTube channel and soon to be podcast episodes. We've talked a lot about cultural representation and inclusivity on Bridgerton. And we've had several conversations with folks, articles shared with us, people commenting on our videos who are people of Indian descent or from India. And so I thought, you know, Teen Vogue doing what Teen Vogue does and continuing to like crush major cultural conversations, has this wonderful op-ed article by Vandana Pawa about this representation. But I love what she said as I was just scrolling while you were talking about Lindsey there. You know, the Sharma sisters, here pictured, Kate and Edwina, are the focal point of Bridgerton season 2. We can have conversations. Their Indian lineage is unclear. Their last name points to one region of the subcontinent, while their linguistic mannerisms point to another. There's some blurring of cultural traditions that some Indian and Indian American and Indian immigrant folks have not liked, and some have liked. Nobody's a monolith. But she says, you know, many will claim it's a win for representation, but it's not the idea that Indianness can be desirable that I find worth celebrating. Being desired by white people isn't the win we're socialized to believe it is, but rather the way Kate, Edwina, and their mother embody forms of intimacy beyond the romantic through acts of cultural tradition.
Yeah, that's what got me. I mean, like, it didn't even occur to me that like it's great that they're the lead, because now we can prove that people like brown people. Like that didn't, but no, like that we saw hair oiling and like all that kind of stuff. Yeah.
Yeah, and I didn't get that perspective, and that could be my whiteness coming through, that I didn't see it as a like, look, we're justifying brownness as desirable.
Yeah, I didn't get that. But again, that could be my whiteness too.
It could be our whiteness.
Or it could be just on a certain level, like we assume that all humans are desirable by other humans. And so that isn't where our brains went. We read so much romance novels that I'm like, like the alien race that's blue and has 3 breasts that I read about last week, desirable. So like, I mean, whatever.
Yeah, I think it's more than our whiteness. It's our love of romance, and that like we just buy into any romance. And in that way are perhaps not seeing what they're putting out there. But I thought that was such an important point to bring out, and those were the scenes that you and I both loved in this season. Were these moments between specifically Edwina and Kate. We do get some from Lady Mary, but not as much. You know, one of the things we love about romance, a lot of romance, if it's adapted into television, or certainly Bridgerton, is that it passes the Bechdel test, in that there are women having conversations not revolving around men. And so much of that was this season with Kate and Lady Danbury and their tete-a-tetes about like how to be a person and how to be a woman and how to like live in this world. And Kate and Edwina about like figuring out who they are and what kind of people they want to be. So I enjoyed reading this article and some of the points that it brought up that kind of fleshed out and explored what intimacy looks like in the show beyond, you know, the wonderfully enjoyable images of a shirtless Jonathan Bailey that I myself enjoyed every single one.
Can I bring up a fashion point right here? I don't know why we got rid of these tulip sleeves, but can we bring them back? I'd rather have these than the prairie dresses that we're having these days. These sleeves look really flattering on like everybody.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Agreed.
Can we not do the cap sleeves? Can we do the tulip sleeves? I don't know if that's what they're called, but I'd like to do this. Speaking of fashion, we do have a comment from Sasha, who is so good to see you, friend. Welcome back.
Hi, friend.
How much purple features between the two sisters, the younger in lighter pastels and the older sister having deep purples? Totally agree. As a purple lover myself, my one requirement for flowers in our backyard is that at least one of them was purple. I loved that. I also love the purple, the nature of purple in royalty. And that purple is the most rare naturally occurring dye on the planet. So always happy to see purple.
Yeah, I hadn't even noticed that they're both in shades. Like I knew Kate was in shades of like purple all the time, but you're right. Well spotted.
Good job. All right. So there's no transition to this last one because we're moving from quasi joy to complicated everything. And I'm turning this one back over to Aaron, because I'll be honest, I have not followed this case. I've seen it all over my social media. I know there was a lot of moms that I follow that were like, hey, we need to surround this mom because what she was convicted of, all of us could have done. Or like, it was a really common case of like kids fall out of cribs sometimes. Like, that's what I know. So I'm happy to turn over to you talking about Melissa Lucio.
Yeah, so I mean, I haven't heard a lot about this case until the last few days, in which her execution has been stayed, and a court has stopped her execution. Melissa Lucio was set to be the first Latina executed in the state of Texas for the alleged murder of her 2-year-old daughter. It's a tragic story from all the way going back to 2007. And as you can see, the Skim does the Lord's work. Is it murder or is it a devastating accident? These are the conversations that we're having. But the court has been presented with new evidence that would prove that it was an accident and that she did not intentionally kill her daughter. And this whole article gives you all the background details you would want to know, as the Skim does. But for me, I brought it in as an empathy exercise because we talk so much about the criminal system. I don't even want to call it criminal justice system. And what does justice look like, and how do we adjudicate death penalty cases, and how many people are abused by that system. And I know that's what Dr. Kristen is highlighting at the end of the Skim, in terms of the way that the system is not necessarily built. We say it is built to support that you are innocent until you're proven guilty, but in so many ways it is not. And it is about getting the conviction and getting the sentencing and putting the person in jail. And so, we've followed a lot of stories about wrongful convictions and even wrongful executions and wrongful deaths, and a lot of the work that places like the Innocence Project and the Equal Justice Initiative go through to do this. And so if you haven't heard this story, you haven't been following this story, I would encourage you to pay attention to it now. Yes, Sasha, I saw that you said criminal injustice system. I like that. I like that one a lot. We may be adopting that one, and we'll continue to give you credit for that. But yeah, that's why I wanted to bring it up and have a little bit of a larger discussion of it and chat about it. It's something that's I feel very emotionally strongly about the way we weaponize incarceration, especially against Black and brown folks. It's no surprise to me that she is a Latina woman of a lower socioeconomic status and finds herself in this position because of a lack of, I would imagine in a lot of ways, resources. But thankfully for the people who keep advocating for her and pushing, and hopefully she is a mother of 14. So, if we're going to start considering motherhood when incarcerating people, I would much rather we have this conversation about this woman, Maria Lucio, than about Elizabeth Holmes.
Yeah. And somebody who has been really strongly advocating for her is Amanda Knox, which I find to be a really fascinating, Amanda has spent her life, she maintains that she was wrongfully convicted, and there's a lot of evidence. We talked about Amanda Knox at the very beginning of this YouTube channel. So if you're interested in her case, go all the way back in our Wayback Machine, and you'll find our conversation about her Netflix documentary. Because there's a lot of, ironically, we're talking about Italy on Colonizers World Tour coming up soon. And her case in the Italian courts proved that there's a lot to be desired in the Italian justice system as well. I'm constantly just reminded that none of us know what we're doing, and none of us know how to punish crime. And none of us know, no country has figured this out. So it's just a constant fumbling towards different things. But something I was thinking about as you were talking is that this idea, like we just pointed out, justice versus injustice in a criminal system. And at some point when I was growing up, it was called the penal system, which we don't really use anymore. And how often words have evolved and language has evolved. And is still constantly evolving. And language is so important to our identity as people. It's how we communicate with each other, obviously. But like people get really, really attached to different words. Like even in that Bridgerton article, the author was talking about the first time she heard Edwina say Didi. She like gasped and called everybody because that word means so much to her, because it's a symbol of the relationship between two women that's close to sisterhood and what that kind of all means. And yet words are often weaponized as well. Yeah. And so it's really hard to know how to handle them.
Yeah. And, you know, this has always been an area of interest. I think just because we're natural, like learners, we love to learn. I've always been fascinated by etymology and like the origins of words and why we have certain words and phrases to explain things. And as we've continued to talk about this and decided to add it as a part of our online training services, we've learned so much more. And I think, you know, this conversation that we just had about criminal justice, criminal injustice, we brought up a little bit the necessity of having an intersectional perspective on it and recognizing that like based on our skin color and class and level of ability and all these other things, gender, we will have different perspectives on those words and what those words mean to our communities and people who look like us, bodies who behave like our bodies do or don't. So I think it's always important to bring in that intersectional perspective, which is like the foundation of almost all the work we do, but it's also a big part of this training, because if you don't understand intersectionality, it's real hard to make the argument that like your language needs to change and evolve.
Yeah, it's really hard. So we've put the direct link in the chat, and I'm about to put up the link on screen as well, which hopefully is an easy one to head on over and type in yourself. So what Aaron and I are referring to is on June the 1st at noon Eastern Standard Time for about 90 minutes. You can join us to have a chat about language and about how to use it. We're calling it words we don't say anymore, which is really, there's just so many. There's so many ways that we can communicate clearer, ways that language has changed and moved, ways that we can do things different. And we'd love to talk together about how we can do that. This is a collaborative process, as language is collaborative. We definitely have some ideas. We've been listening to some people. But in a great example, you know, we've heard from a lot of Native and Indigenous folks, they really don't want us to use spirit animal anymore. And there's some other Native and Indigenous folks that are like, man, I don't really care. But one of our points is just like we talked a little bit ago about informed consent and what a lot actually in some coverage we're recording for you guys coming up. I'll say anytime that you can have more information and make a more informed choice about how you're speaking, what decisions you're making, the more that your then opinion or life takes someone else into account. And I think that's really, really helpful. Plus, we're going to have jokes. So
have jokes.
I mean, come hang out with us for an hour and a half. We will be recording it, but the recording will not be available to anyone who has not paid to join us.
Purchase a ticket. Yeah.
This is, you got to purchase a ticket to get the replay. But if you're like, oh, I really want it, but I'm not free at that time, you can feel free to register, and we'll make sure you get the recording afterwards. And figure it out. But we're going to be doing a lot more of these kind of spot trainings. And so you, our beloved YouTube community, we'd love for you to keep in mind to join us for them about 4 times a year. We're planning on doing these small, about $47 US. We take all international currency. And you can come and hang out with us and ask us some more questions, especially if you're part of the replay crew. And maybe it's a little hard to get here in the chat on a Tuesday. We totally get it. Join us for a training, and maybe we can have a better chat over those topics.
Yeah, because I think, you know, one of the reasons why we feel it's so important to have this conversation and why we're talking about it and our training on so many different platforms is because we have so many different platforms now.
Yeah, it's delightful. What an honor. Yeah.
Because we have so many opportunities to communicate with other people. I think it's in a way accelerating our understanding of language because we have the access to it and how language is changing so much. And it's real easy to get quote unquote behind, or to feel like you're behind, or to be confused, or to be exhausted, or to be embarrassed if you use a word that then somebody tells you is offensive or upsetting, or, you know, racist or sexist, or all of these things. And the example, you know, that I want to share, because we do it all the time. Like you and I do it. Mm-hmm. I mean, we're better at it. We try to be better at it. That's what empathy practice means. But like the example that I thought of the other day, we were in a group chat with some of our interns, and they were joking about how old Kristen and I are.
We are old.
And there was like one of them like included a joke, and I replied like, that was savage. Like, and you know, because it's a word that we use now from the youths to say like, oh, that was rough. That was a burn. And I typed it out, and like I was grocery shopping at the time, and I'm 4 more aisles later, and I was like, oh my God, we should not use that word anymore. But like,
oh my God, I didn't even catch it. Like I didn't even catch it.
Because, and this is part of the discussion we want to have, because words do have different meaning in different contexts.
Oh God.
And so people, you know, we've had people in these conversations come back and say like, well, spirit animal doesn't, like, I don't associate it at all with Native and Indigenous folks. Like we've taken it to mean something else now. We've evolved it into something else. So does it matter? Do we have to always step back from these things? And that's, you know, where we always say like, listen and ask. And like, if you can find other words. But like, for me, I remember getting so upset at that Dior ad that Johnny Depp was in for Sauvage. And like the backlash from Native Twitter and Native and Indigenous peoples all across America were like, what the F is Dior doing? Naming a perfume Sauvage. And like that came to my head as I was like looking at my text, and I was like, oh, okay. But like, it was such a great example that we can use that, like, you know, we're all human beings. We all make mistakes. We're all imperfect people. It's hard to keep up with the way language is so rapidly changing, but we do have ideas for how you can do it. And we do have ways to help you. And so we would really like for you to join us for our training, so that we can all help each other make less tits of ourselves.
Yeah. And if you're seriously, and if you're in an organization where like 5 or 6 folks would love to be a part of this, let us know. We can certainly get you a discount code and all that kind of other businessy stuff. Yeah. But we hope you've also met us enough and know us enough that our deep hope at all times is to show up in service. And so that's what this is going to be. We're providing this resource for the planet, but definitely you guys are a community, because we find it troubling and stressful. And we want to, and we have the luxury of time to figure this stuff out and talk to each other. And so we want to share with you guys who don't have the time maybe to do a bunch of Google searches and listen to a lot of podcasts. We want to pass on the learning that we've had, which is why we do empathy exercises as well. This is our job, to scour things all the time. And we want to pass on that level of service. But I think that's all we've got for today, our Nadine-less episode.
Sadly, Nadine-less. Hopefully next week will be full of the Nadine content.
Yes. I will not be able to join you next week because I will be in California at a board meeting for Urban Promise International, one of my favorite causes that I get to lend my brain to. So Dr. Aaron and Dr. Nadine, by all accounts, will be here. Keep your eye on our socials for any updated, any kind of thoughts and updates. I can't lie, I'm really pissed I'm not gonna be able to talk about Turning Red because I have so many questions.
Oh my God, I know.
Time moves on, and we gotta honor schedules and bodies, as pesky as both of those things are. So friends and neighbors, I will see you the second week of May. God willing and the creek don't rise. Aaron and Nadine will see you next week. And no matter when we see you, our hope for you is that you are known, safe, seen, and loved. Talk to you later.
Everybody. Have a good day.